This is the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast with Greg Smith and Jay Foreman. Tell it to me straight up.
Hello, and welcome into the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast, proudly part of the Hurrdat Varsity Network. I am Greg Smith. You're finally remembered to get gas on the way in here. Alicia Keys listening to, friend.
I am Jay Foreman, your New York Jets ultimate hater for a multitude of reasons, as we'll find out later. But Alicia Keys will do that to you, man. It's that voice.
Man, listen, I don't know what kind of tone that will set for the podcast, but it'll do something because I was jamming to some Alicia Keys on the way in.
Was you singing though?
Oh yeah, you don't know my name. You got to kind of get into that. You can't just let that ride through. But sometimes it's weird in the car. Like I have no idea what I want to listen to when I'm going to get in there, and then I just put on a shuffle. And then sometimes when you're in the car, you just hear a song by one person, and you're like, oh, okay, I got to just listen to this person the rest of the time. So I spent the majority of the drive here jamming to Alicia Keys. So we'll see what kind of results that produces. I'm kind of chill though right now. Like I think it kind of puts you in a chill, relaxed vibe.
Oh, so the wind the win at Purdue didn't put you at ease.
I mean, it's fine.
It seemed like Husker Nation is at ease.
It does seem like they're at ease. I feel like this is the first time maybe that we've come in here with Sasha, who's producing us again today, and she did not say, let's just avoid the game. So that happens. So that's always good. Did it put you at ease, Jay? Were you at ease?
I mean, you definitely are at ease when Purdue spots you 14 points. I'm like, hey, look, you got to try hard to lose this game.
Yeah, it's one of those things, too,
that
where
put me at ease. And
you're sitting there and you're like, oh, this is kind of what Nebraska usually does to other teams. Unfortunately, like that's just kind of how it goes. It was weird to be on the other side, or to see Nebraska be on the other side of that.
It was like, hey, you're like, am I really watching the Nebraska-Purdue game? Because Purdue pretty much, it came back the last 2 years to beat Nebraska. So I wouldn't say at ease. I'm happy for the program and the team to get a W because, as much as we look at Wisconsin and obviously Ohio State is the top dog in the conference. Until we can handle the Purdue's, the Illinois, I'll even throw the Maryland and Rutgers. I've watched I can't believe how many Rutgers and Maryland's games.
It does feel like I've seen way too much of them this year.
I don't know why
it feels like that.
Yeah, but it's like, all right, let me watch one game. Okay, that was a good game. They look like a pretty good football team. No, that was just a joke, right?
Right.
I'm 3 weeks into watching Rutgers.
Okay, so now you got a good handle on what's happening
I'm
with
like,
Rutgers
you know what?
and Greg Schiano
I see
now.
exactly what they're doing. So Nebraska has to handle those. And then once we start to handle those on a consistent basis, I think then we'll kind of be able to, I guess, leapfrog into beating the Iowas and Wisconsin. So I'm happy for them. I think it's, I'm definitely not at ease because it's, it wasn't perfect. I mean,
still plenty
tried to
of
come
stuff
back like Return of the Jedi on us, But I will say, from the performance against Iowa, to back it up and then get a win, after the letdown of losing Nebraska probably got on, I don't know if the bus or the plane from Iowa. It had to think that we lost that game.
Absolutely. Yeah, so they should have.
That's harder to deal with when you beat yourself versus, if you go out and play Ohio State and you just got the brakes beat. You're like, hey, look, we got a lot of work to do, right?
We got to go. Right. We got to go do some stuff.
So then to come back and put the work in and go out there and win is a good deal. And also, look, it's 2 back-to-back weeks that you've had consistent and winning quarterback play from Adrian. Mm-hmm. And so that's good. That's something that he hasn't done for quite some time, especially with this type of pressure. He's got to he's going to practice. Like his first year, he kind of already knew, like they just gave everything to him. Even the second year, this is where every day he's not essentially competing. I think he's separated himself now. I mean, let's face it.
I would totally agree with that. Like, I think that there's no more Luke controversy. You might try to sprinkle Luke in, but you'll even get like you saw this week.
Back.
Well, you're right. Where Adrian was playing very well, and Scott said after the game that they had a plan to go to Luke and rotate him in, but Adrian was playing well enough to where they just kind of put that on the back burner, which is good. I think it's also a different encouraging sign that they continue to stay with what was
what's
working.
Hot, yeah. And people will ask you why now. Why are you playing Luke?
Right.
Yeah,
you would get that question more.
And so that's good, and I think it correlates to the team. And I think like I was going to say, is Adrian is going to practice every day, knowing he has to truly compete, and that's a totally different mindset.
Yep.
Every athlete should be in that position. And so I think they did well. I think they did some good things. I think they did a really good job on defense at doing some things. Anytime a team passes the ball 50 times, they're going. I mean, in this day and age, they're going to get yards. So, don't look. Oh, well, sometimes like I was against Penn State, they had 91 plays. We gave up 500 yards. They almost ran 100 plays.
Right, that's
5 yards of play. I mean, it's not that hard to get in this day in college football. So I think the defense did some good things. The pass rush was there. Pass breakups were there. Tackles for losses were there. I thought going into this game that Purdue's offense, now granted, their special teams didn't allow their offense to play offense.
But that was what you knew that coming in. Their special teams was as bad, if not worse, than Nebraska's coming in.
That's hard. That's hard to go into a game and say Nebraska is significantly better on special teams. Purdue has been consistently bad in special teams. But what that bad special teams has done, what it did was it didn't allow Purdue to really play offense. So I thought coming into this game, Purdue's offense was better and would give us more problems than Iowa's because they got two NFL receivers. Right. They got two capable tight ends. They got in my opinion, two really good running backs that are totally different. You got Big Horvath, that's kind of Mike Allstott Jr., but he actually can
throwback,
catch.
Man.
Right, but look, he's faster than everybody thinks he's not athletic because
he got a little wiggle to him.
He's 6'3", 240-something pound white guy. But let me tell you something. He can break tackles. He can pass block. He can run in between the tackles. He can run outside. He can catch the ball. And
you saw all of that actually in a little burst in that game.
In the first couple series.
Especially early.
And he's super athletic. Then 22, their running back, is kind of like a little bit of a bootleg version of what the LSU running back was last year, where he's kind of a little bit squattier. But he hurt us last year. Right. So I thought, that their offensive line isn't as good as usual. And their quarterback play, even it doesn't matter. They're just generally Brom can get them to be serviceable. Right. So, but when you're down 14 or when you're up 14-0, I think the defense played well. You saw some consistent pressure. It was Ben Stilley. Our guy Garrett Nelson got in there for a sack and a half.
He did. Yeah, he played one of his better games
ever,
I think, as a Husker so far. And actually, it's funny. We talked about it briefly yesterday, you and I, off pod, obviously, that I actually thought his play improved because they used him a little bit differently with lining him up with his hand in the dirt out wide. And he could use different technique that way versus having him stand up on the outside 3-4, a true outside linebacker. Right. Like I think a couple of little tweaks here and there really freed him up a little bit, which I'm glad to see that for him because now he has that to show to coach to say, hey, if we continue to do this, then I can keep doing some stuff for us. And now I found a role on the team to be able to help. So that's a really good sign.
The thing is like playing the 3-4, this is what people don't understand. Playing outside linebacker in 3-4, those guys are unicorns. The Von Millers, the Joey Porters, the Kevin Greens, the Greg Lloyds, the Lawrence Taylors. Like these guys aren't like on your top 300 list. If there's one in a class, that's great. If there's one Von Miller in a 24, whatever it is, that's great. So there's however many colleges out there running 3-4.
Right.
So it's hard to do. And it's hard for some guys to learn how to play on their feet and then do everything you need to do for an outside linebacker, let alone pass rush. It's easier to do with your hand in the dirt. Maybe they stumbled into it, something they saw in practice.
Yeah, because they also did it last week. They did it in an Iowa game as well with a couple of guys.
Better. Yeah. And, he can actually probably use more of his functional strength that way because he's a big old strong kid. So the bull rush is obviously the first rush that everybody should learn. And then you're able to run some games with him, which is like a TE stunt, ET stunt, or some slants where he shoots into the gap because he's strong enough to get there and he's quick enough too. So I was really happy for him to do some positive things. And these last 3 weeks, take away Illinois. He played decent against Illinois, but you can't really say anybody
not
played
very
good.
many people play well.
But for him, he's starting to, I think, finally be comfortable, but then also starting to find a role. But then he's starting to be effective, right? And then, Caleb Tanner this year, even though the stats haven't shown it, he hasn't busted as many plays at the point of attack like
right.
he did last year.
And I've seen some really, even the Iowa game, I thought he had a couple of really nice plays where he didn't get credit for the tackle or anything, but he either forced a guy inside or outside or really filled the gap to affect the offense. And I think he did it again this game. It's funny. I would be really curious to hear like what the coaches say to Caleb Tanner, because it's one of those things where like you may see that as a fan and think, oh, man, he only had like two tackles in those games. Right. So maybe, you know, where is he? Why is he not playing that well? But I would bet you anything that Mike Dawson and Shannon and those guys are patting him on the head, patting him on the back, saying you're doing what you're supposed to be doing out there for us. And that keeps the guy encouraged and keeps him doing that because he's doing those little things that past defenses here just weren't really doing, right? And those are the difference between making those runs, for example, like a 3-yard run or a 2-yard run versus a guy creasing you and hitting you for 10 or 12 and making that safety come up and have to make that play. It's those little things. Was that the title of the podcast last week or 2 weeks ago about the little things? Those are the things that add up for this defense.
And you got to play team defense before you can have a bell cow. So they're starting to see. It seems like there's some guys are starting to turn the corner, and you know, it seems like every year with Nebraska, especially with the offense, right? There's like the last 4 games of the season, or the first year, it was the last like whenever they stumbled upon Divine. So it's probably like just say like the last 8, right? Because he didn't really play the first 4. So like the last 6 games of the season, the first year the offense started rolling, right? They're like, all right, we started to figure it out. Last year was like last 4 because that was Diedrich, right? Let's just say last 4. Now it's like, okay, we got 2 games left. So, like, let's just say the last 4 of these games, you're starting to see some guys really turn the corner. So that's a good thing. It's frustrating because ideally that corner should be turned and we're going down the straigthe.
Yeah, you hit the ground running to start the season.
We got to hit the lines. Right. It's like we ease into it. So, you know, the better that Caleb Tanner plays, Garrett Nelson, to go along with JoJo Doman and Payne, you know, let's not forget him.
Yep, a nice role too. Yeah.
That is better for the defense and better for the team. So I think that, you know, defensively, you know, they can hang their hat on the last 2 performances, right? 2 different offenses, 2 good performances, two solid performances, and better. And you know, one thing I will say, you know, Cam Taylor-Britt, he made that phenomenal play. Yep. When it was crunch time.
Yeah, he definitely did.
So it's pointing in the right direction. Is it a finished product? No way. No. Can everybody do better and do more? Yeah, because it needs to be done, because there's still some stuff that you'd like to see, you know, improve on. So, and then, you know, I always, you know, like, as soon as the game was over, everybody was excited for Nebraska to win for about like 15 minutes, right? And then it was like, oh, well, they only beat Purdue. Well, they could lose to Purdue.
They could have, and Purdue came in with a better record than Nebraska.
Yeah, and whatever Purdue played better.
And honestly, they were like, people say this in football all the time, but Purdue was better than their record because remember they got screwed in that one game against the Minnesota game with the phantom pass interference. Right. None of Purdue's games coming into this one against Nebraska had been decided by more than 7 points.
Right.
They were playing in a lot of close football games, finding ways to lose, and they played Northwestern tough. Yeah. So like. Yes, they were 2-4, but that team was better than that record, and maybe with some more opt-outs and that sort of thing. Like the mindset wasn't there. And Nebraska has seen that on their end well. But like you said, they could have easily have just lost that game to Purdue, and I think in years past you would have seen that, right? And so that's like getting a win is a win at this point, especially when you start to think of it in like steps of how Nebraska is going along here. Is I think that there are things to take away from going back to the Penn State game. We still have to throw out Illinois, even though that was still in the end an important lesson to learn, because and hopefully that's what the team takes into this week, that you cannot relax in this league, because with Minnesota coming to town, like regardless of their kind of situation, that's the team that put it on you last year.
Embarrassed you.
Right. So Minnesota, in a lot of ways, should be looking at Nebraska and saying, we can get right against them. Right. Like, we can just do – why can't we do the same thing we did to them last year?
Right. And they're saying that they're going to do the best games for the crossover games, and we got to beat up on Nebraska before we play Wisconsin.
Right.
Yeah.
So that'll be – and so the motivation factor should definitely be there, and Nebraska should be able to see that – if we continue to put the work in and we continue to hammer those details, you see how we're progressing, it can keep going that way. But it's funny because you led me to something perfect earlier when you were saying that, there's guys that are kind of turning the corner, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about the offense. And kind of every week we kind of go through Coach Speak.
Coach Speak to Real Talk.
Okay, we tell you a quote that somebody said, and then we tell you what they really meant. And I want to go to the offense because I want to go to Wan'Dale Robinson, somebody who has been progressing throughout these last couple of weeks, and you wish that it was somebody that they figured out how to get the ball to on a consistent basis from game one, but they haven't for whatever reason. He said after this game against Purdue, in which he kind of tore Purdue up, didn't score, but had a really nice game, on if he thinks the coaches told the quarterbacks to look for him more. He said, quote, I mean, probably. There are a couple of times that it's like, if there's nothing there, just dump it down to me and let me get what I can get. But at the end of the day, our quarterbacks have to stay true to their reads and do what they're supposed to do. What did he really mean by that?
He that was if there's a Nebraska version of Keyshawn Johnson, just throw me the damn ball. That's it. That's the Wan'Dale Robinson.
Like, look, that was the very nice version.
The very nice version said, "Finally, what he's really saying is finally." They are just letting me give me the ball, and we've talked about this though. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you might stop him if he got 10 catches. The first 4 you might stop him on a couple yards after carry, but he's a good after catch. He's a good enough player that he's going to make something happen, and then he's going to break a tackle. You're going to overrun him. Boom, he hits you with the explosive play.
And he hit you with one really big one in that game that actually got called back for penalty on that weird drive. And so that was, I mean, he had his opportunity right there.
Right. So what he means is just he needs to be that guy. And he needs to be featured in different aspects of the offense, and short passing game, crossing passing game. He, for a little guy, he catches the ball really, really good in traffic, because he's an explosive athlete. I mean, obviously you look at him, he can get up off the ground pretty good, and he has really good, solid hands. So again, I mean, what he means is just give me the ball.
He had that.
Do your thing, do what you need to do. But when that ain't open, I'm open.
Right, I'm always open.
He said he might not be Wan'Dale. He's 7'11", right? He's always
That's
open.
Right, but it's funny because the one think about that go route up for us the left side where Betts was in the same area and Wan'Dale got the pass interference. He had that guy cooked.
Yeah.
Even with the pass interference, if that ball was thrown out further and just let him run under it, he might have got that and gone to the house. But I'm with you. Like, basically, he is saying just give me the ball. And I think that Nebraska has done a much, much better job, especially these last 2 games, of figuring out how to utilize all of his skill sets. I think in this particular game, it helped having Dedrick Mills back,
right.
So that you have a reliable running back that even if Mills did not have a huge statistical day, he makes the defense have to pay attention to him because they know that he can hurt them because he's going to see the creases because his vision has improved over his time in Nebraska in this offense as well, so they don't have to stick him back there at running back. They've done a much, much better job of getting Wan'Dale involved, which I think helps the entire offense. Like, I don't think that is any real coincidence that the offense has been better as they continue to find good ways to get him the football because it loosens things up for everybody.
Let's break that down.
Yeah, you get a lot of guys out there that are making plays. So, you got the Austin Allens,
who's been to me the biggest surprise. Like, and I don't want to say
offense.
that I did not think he was bad by any means, but he's been the biggest surprise. One of my picks are most improved Husker of this year. Like, he's had a really nice season,
and he's been most consistent. And then when you hear, I think Lubick say that those are the same things he's been doing, Monday through Thursday. That's what you want. And he was a good athlete. I mean, he's a
basketball
player. Good height, and he's starting to really come along and starting to be not just a nice season. He's starting to be a factor, right?
Yeah, like somebody that now you got to pay attention to as an opposing defense,
right? Say, he caught a couple passes. No, this is a dude that can hurt you. But really, what makes I always said this, and I know the quarterback gets way too much credit and way too much blame in any college, any system. But what makes this offense go, or will make this offense go, is a consistent running game.
Yep.
And just having Dedrick Mills back there paid dividends regardless of how many yards he got, because he got some tough yards. So what people don't understand, they're always like, we need a running back, and he has to have 15 carries for 120 yards. Yes, you'd like that, of course.
Yeah, you would always like
right?
that. Yeah.
But what you want is the guy that's always going to get positive yards, hit the same creases, make a couple yards after contact, keep the defense honest, and keep you even with the chains or ahead of the chains.
Right.
So if you run on first down,
and their offense is so much better when they keep it that way.
Here's also, He's our best pass blocker. Mm-hmm. So when you think that when Wan'Dale was not only playing running back, he was in there for pass protection. So now you're eliminating him in 2 roles, right? So he's not going to run the ball. Now he's going to be taking on a linebacker or a defensive end or a blitzing safety. So he's eliminated anyway. So when you have somebody that can do that, right, and Dedrick Mills actually can catch the ball better than he physically looks. He's a big old kid. He can catch the ball better. Wan'Dale can get those matchups against linebackers, against safeties, or the third corner, and then that opens up ideally for Betts, right? Which is
started to see a little bit more,
and that's a great thing for Betts, for a kid that, obviously, had to get right academically, but he continued to work at that, which you got to give him kudos for, because it's something when you have a kid that's focused and wants to do it during COVID, right?
Yeah,
to pass it, get through. Work his tail off all off season, come in and take advantage of his opportunities, and he should probably be getting more.
And now he's taking advantage of those opportunities. He's getting rewarded where it's not a ton of targets, and I'm with you 100%. He should get more targets. But what he's gotten enough, though, to where he says, okay, that's reinforcement. That's positive reinforcement to say, I'm doing the right stuff here. Right. I can continue on this path, and I can be as good as, because I think it was maybe 3 weeks ago now, Wan'Dale actually spoke about this, about how he tells Xavier Betts that you can be as good as you want to be. You keep putting this work in. We see what you can do athletically. You keep putting the work in. You're going to be a great player here. So now when you have a peer that's as good as Wan'Dale is telling you that, your coaches are obviously telling him that, and now he's getting a little bit rewarded as a true freshman, that can be a really good sign for his future if he continues on the path that he's on.
Right, yeah, because he looks different than everybody that's out there.
Yeah, I joke with you that it looks like, to me, I watched him a lot at Bellevue Western High School. It looks a lot like that still in college, where you just drop him out there and he just looks athletically different than people
when he breaks the huddle. He just has that gallop or that look, and I'm happy for him. And he's gonna and look, if you can continue, these next 2 weeks are crucial.
Yep.
And let's just as we look down. Let's just assume they're going to play Minnesota. This is a huge game, right? Because if you beat Minnesota, and you should beat Minnesota, right? I know Minnesota thinks that they have the mental edge, and they embarrassed Nebraska last year, and they got Nebraska's kryptonite on offense versus Nebraska's defense. You beat Minnesota, and then you go in that crossover game, you win that one. It's a totally different mindset going into the offseason.
Yep.
But you can't get to the crossover game. That's essentially like a bowl game. Mm-hmm. It's like a jamboree you're playing for whatever play, in basketball. If you don't handle your business right here,
right.
And this isn't the trap game. These are the games that I wouldn't say worries me, but these are the games that really, really would have me intense as a coach. I'll probably be even more jacked up this week because this is a winnable game. This is a game you should win. You could win. You have all the advantages. Granted, you're playing at home, even though there's nobody here, but you're still playing at home.
Right.
Okay, you're playing a team that hasn't played a football game in 2 weeks, so they're just off.
And to be honest, if you just look at it from a football perspective, you want people to be healthy, but they're going to be missing guys.
They're going to be missing.
Because was it? I'm going to mess up the number, which I had pulled up in front of me. The 44, 45 people total in the athletic department.
21 athletes. But then they lost their best player, Bateman, to go into the NFL.
Wow, it's been so long since I've seen him play. I actually forgot that happened, that he had opted out again.
He opted out when they first shut down because of COVID. So he's their best player. But they have other guys, right? So
and the thing is, but see, now I know you're going with why this worries you though is because, and as you were even saying that, I kind of cringed a little bit when you start to think of, oh, they're missing this guy or they're missing that guy. You think automatically, oh, Nebraska's going to relax.
Right.
This is a good test to show you how far they've come maturity wise, and that's actually, it's funny because the things that I was watching for with this game against Purdue are some of the same things that I'll be watching for in that Minnesota game, and they actually have nothing to do with the opponent or with kind of the X's and O's. I think Nebraska, and I've said this before here, I've said it other places, I'm going to keep saying it. Nebraska has enough talent to win football games and to compete in the Big Ten West right now.
Oh, yeah. No, without a doubt.
The reason that they're not doing that, it has nothing to do with how much talent they have. It is a mental thing with Nebraska, and it starts with two big things, confidence and effort.
Right.
Preparation is in there too, and I put that in the effort category because to me it's the same thing. And if Nebraska comes out this week during this week of practice and prepares the way that they did for Iowa, the way that they just did for Purdue, then they'll be fine. Right. It's nothing to do with the opponent at this point. Now, when you play Ohio State,
that's different.
That's different.
You got to play.
But really, as we've said here before, like we take Ohio State, put them on a little shelf over there, like they're on a different level than the rest of the teams in the league. Everybody else is together, and you see that based on the fact that 10 teams in the league have two wins, right?
Yeah, it's just Ohio State.
Everybody else is the same.
And Indiana.
Yeah, and even then, you could have beat Northwestern, and that's the way that when we talk. You said earlier about if Nebraska can win against Minnesota and then win a crossover game. Then all of a sudden, when you go into the offseason, it's, oh, man, we really should have beat Northwestern and Iowa, right? And you can actually say that with some belief and say, okay, if we clean this up, then we can go ahead and get this done. And that gives you, coming back to my word, confidence. Going into the offseason. It is not a reason for you to let up during the offseason. It's another reason for you to go even harder. Right. But that confidence and effort, I think, is where it starts for this Nebraska football team. Because if they get that, then I think that they can do a lot better than what they've been doing. But that consistency obviously has been all over the map, and you see it even throughout this season. Right,
and something just came in my mind right here. I guess there's two different types of confidence, and everybody's a chicken and the egg, and I don't even know if there's a right answer for that. Right? What came first? Right? There's confidence where you're just talking, right? Mm-hmm. Blowing smoke, just like we call it selling wolf tickets, right? When you're just talking versus tangible confidence, right? And what I mean by tangible confidence is saying this is where we got our confidence in because we did A, B, C, D, or whatever. You could be just A and B. This is why we're confident. This is because confidence is something I can show you that you've done and get you to believe in versus, hey, we're good.
Yeah, we could do this versus we've done it. So Nebraska's
be
run
Indiana
defense.
Next year.
Nebraska's rush defense and how they have some tangible examples now to show versus before coming into this game, we're going to be a good secondary, right? Like those are the two things. Now they showed it this week. We finally saw, I think, the secondary we thought we were going to see coming in.
Right, and last week too against Iowa for the most.
Yeah, they did a better job.
Right, man. But this was their best game, all as a unit, everybody as a unit. So. That they should have more tangible confidence, but you can't you can't lay an egg and take everything that you built away. Right. And it really comes down to going to practice with the intent of not just going to practice to get better and play your best at practice. Right. And there's a big difference. But if you don't go to enough practices, or if you've not been there enough, or you haven't watched enough football, you can't tell the difference. Right? There's some guys, and this is in the past, and I swear this was always – I remember talking to players that play for Bo Pelini, right? They would play, and they would lose to – they get blown out by, say, Ohio State or Iowa, right? Or whatever teams that they –
Wisconsin probably for them because they were,
And they would say, well, I graded out at 85%. How could you grade out at 85%? And Melvin Gordon is still running up and down – up and down the field.
It's funny, on Sundays, people see Melvin Gordon, and they still kind of get a little anxious when they see
him. I watched him last night. I was like, damn, that's the dude that just – well, he had the national record for a week, and then the dude from Oklahoma took it away from him. But he only played 3 quarters. So there's asterisks by the dude from Oklahoma. Right. Melvin Gordon did it. So that's the whole point where that let me know that they're just going to practice to do what they have to do in order to be the first guy out there when they call the team, versus coming to practice, getting better, and going to the point of really in tune to practice and practicing like you would play the game. Because that's shown me in this last couple of weeks they've been practicing more like they were taking a more game-like approach, right? I'm sure the effort was there, the preparation was there, the communication was there. The anxiety is there, the good anxiety, and the peer pressure is there, right? So
right, because you're starting to grow. You can tell in the way that the guys are now talking post game that you're getting an increased amount of guys on the team that are vocally, like outwardly upset and tired of being in the situation that they've been in. And sometimes that manifests itself in different ways. And I think right now what it feels like with this team is it's making guys hold each other accountable for the effort that they're giving Monday through Friday. Like something has happened where it used to be like, especially earlier in Frost's tenure here, where he would come out and say, oh, we weren't that good in practice, we were flat, yada, yada. And then now you hear more players talking about whether or not how they did in practice. The last 2 weeks, you've heard guys being very positive about that. But something, you know what I mean? Like something has changed with the way the players approach that, which is exactly what you have to get to, because there's only so long that like Barrett Ruud can be yelling at like just Luke Reimer or somebody. Not to say that was the case, to say you need to come out and give better effort. The real change happens when Will Honus goes to Luke Reimer and tells him that.
You got to pick it up,
and
that's the best. The best peer pressure is the positive one, right? Where you're holding each other accountable and you don't want to let each other down. That's the best peer pressure. That's the best team concept. When people always ask, like, why were we good in the 90s? Why is Alabama good? I guarantee you, the best thing. Nick Saban's doing one thing, and one thing. Majority of his time is he's up there. He's coaching.
Right.
Their coaching staff is coaching. That's what they're doing because they know in that locker room everything is handled. Because when these guys leave the locker room and go to the practice field and obviously on the game, it's already set on what type of effort they're going to give. And we saw it come to fruition though, right? The Illinois game, and everybody had
saw the laps.
And I always look the best quote, and I always say, man, people. I didn't realize how smooth Nick Saban was when he came to my house. My dad loved Nick Saban. I loved him too. My dad was like, brother, you ain't going to East Lansing, okay? Because I want you to come home, okay? Because it's gangster up at East Lansing. But one of the best quotes I ever heard him say or seen him or, read, he's like, the pain of discipline has to be worth not having the pain of disappointment.
Right.
And the pain of disappointment is one of the worst things ever. So I think the pain of disappointment after that Illinois game and some of the embarrassment, how they got – I mean, that was probably the lowest of the low, right? Really probably clicked it for guys, and then I think it immediately turned because at the end of the day, there's only so much you want your guys on your team, whether it's your captains or your player of the game or the odd interview or whatever. Mm-hmm. You want these guys relaying the message because when you have the coach doing it so much, it gets lost and it gets watered down.
Yep.
Right, because Luke Reimer's message that actually came from the coach is different than, say, Cam Taylor-Britt or, one of the, Ty Robinson. It's all saying the same thing, but it's resonating differently in each position group, right? And same with on offense, right? So Adrian, what he's thinking or what he's saying, Wando Robinson, X, Y, and Z. So you want them all going that same way. If you got coaches out there speaking for you, right? It's like if you're getting in the scrap back at school and you're like, hey, man, I got to go get my big brother. You got to handle your business. You got to
do it yourself.
Yeah, you got to sooner or later. When you can't come home until you handle your business. So it's good that these guys are starting to grow up. Hopefully, they handle their business, which they should. They shouldn't be thinking this is a pressure-packed game. The pressure should be on them just to do what you need to do.
Continue to do what you've been doing,
and then
take
do
care
more.
of you.
And do more because if there was one bad thing this week, it was too many penalties. The game was chippy.
It was chippy. I don't mind the chippy. I actually like that from Nebraska and in the way that you like that late hit that they had against Iowa to set the tone setter, you called it. I don't mind Nebraska playing chippy because you and I have talked about this a lot with Nebraska, like with them playing physical, and when you watch other teams, you watch Indiana, you watch Iowa, whoever, like they just play a physical brand of football, and while you want it to be under control, you also want to. Sometimes you got to get a little dirty. It's okay. So
when Williams hit the guy out of bounds, that was just the play from the play before.
Yeah, that was to do with that.
Right, but I liked how he didn't even make eye contact. He just let you know, like I said,
I'm here.
It's like that.
Yeah, it's like that, and I'm here. Though I did not like Caleb Tanner getting the penalty for trash talking.
No,
like I wasn't with that at all. But it's funny too because you mentioned like guys talking, like speaking the same language. Like it sounds like the coaches and the players are saying some of the same things, and you can see that in the post post-game, this past game, is some of the things that Adrian said in post-game, Wandale also said, so you know that they're on the same page. Levi Falk, I think, talked after the game, and he said some of those things, too, about the passing game in particular. The defensive guys that talked, I think it was Ben Stilley and Cam Taylor-Britt, they said some of the similar things. So that, to me, shows that guys in the coaching staff are on the same page.
Right.
And that message is starting to resonate. And it was funny because it happened a couple weeks ago. It was Casey Rogers. Right. Casey Rogers talked on a Monday, and I kept noticing how many different Tony Tuioti-isms, I called him, that he was dropping, right? He said about 5 different things that Tony Tuioti normally says, and I was like, oh, okay. The message is actually sinking in. And Casey is a guy that both of us are really high on, and he's having a good season too. Right. So that is a great sign. But one more thing I want to definitely mention, because I was talking about the things that are not necessarily to do with X's and O's that I noticed. Did you notice that during this game, there was a lot more joy on the sidelines? Post game as well. You saw it after. I think it was either the first or second touchdown. Adrian comes to the sideline, gets a big hug.
Everybody
from Scott Frost,
there.
And everybody is coming around. You see it post game. You see Adrian and Scott Frost embracing. You see DiCaprio Boodle doing. Now this was my favorite one. DiCaprio Boodle coming up during Scott Frost's interview. He puts his arm around Frost. He kind of makes a joke. I'm not going to say anything. And then Frost goes into immediately about how he loves this team.
Right.
That's one of those things to me that I pay a great deal of attention to, because there's 2 reasons. One is I think that it shows that the team is actually having a little bit of fun.
Right.
Like, I think that sometimes this team, and Scott is like this too, and you can see it in these press conferences where he just looks like he's holding on to it so tight, right? And we can't even enjoy anything, right? Now, part of that comes with losing. Right? That does come with losing. But the other thing is, though, is that it feels like, at least for this game in this moment, that it's another step towards like everybody kind of liking each other. Right. Like, you don't always get that feeling, right? And you don't have to be buddy. There's always going to be that healthy respect, right? And that little bit of fear with your coach. But there also needs to be some of that outward happiness and love that you also saw at UCF. Think about the pictures that you have in your mind about Frost down at UCF before he left to take the Nebraska job. You got the one where he's sitting in the pile of the players, right? And he's posing, he's crowd surfing with guys on video. You got the big smile coming through a guy. Like, that stuff has been totally missing here from Nebraska.
It's been a stressful situation.
They all look so stressed, and I'm just happy to see them all look a little happy.
Look, man, the pain and disappointment leads to stress, man.
It does.
I'm telling you, there's a lot of regret because I guarantee you and I've been here, dude. We won 3 national championships. I think about '96 losing to Texas more than I think about beating the brakes off of Tennessee and Florida and Miami. That's the dead truth. So I thought we were prepared. We just got besieged by the flu that week, but we had a couple. In my opinion,
brown bottle flu.
No.
Okay, the actual flu. Okay, I'm just saying.
We had one coach in particular that was playing a couple saps, and they got James Brown was still dancing on him. He was dancing a jig on him. But it's good to see those guys, and that's what you want. You want the team camaraderie. But I think what it is it's they are actually enjoying, I guess, and people always use this word. This is the catchphrase: enjoying the process, right? Mm-hmm. They are actually embracing it, and I think before they fought it. And this is
true. That's a great point.
And Scott, he alluded to it sometimes, or in a roundabout way, in my opinion, where you had some guys that have been part of whatever coaching staff before, and they did it one way, and they think, even though they've been losing, right? Mm-hmm. They know they've been losing. You don't get a coach fired when you're winning,
right?
When you're
generally a couple of I'm not gonna go there, right?
But the rate that you were losing, the how you were losing, and the things that you were doing led to your coach getting fired. But subconsciously, they thought that was the right thing, and they were fighting it, right? They were fighting the process. Yes, they might have been going to weights and doing all that stuff, but where they might have only been in 70% when they really need to be in 100%. And there has to be a time when you have to toe the line and you have to come to reality. And their reality, hopefully, and we will only know this in 3 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. Is that Illinois game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because that has a chance to be a real turning point
in the whole season, and maybe in the whole program, because you got to think they came out against Ohio State, and you really didn't. It's kind of one of those things. We sat in here and say, okay, we saw some great things, and so they thought they won, right?
Right.
Because they played well. Then you go out, okay, you don't play Wisconsin, Northwestern. They played well at times. Really wasn't a big loss, right? Okay, then you go and you beat Penn State, right? Mm-hmm. Then, okay, we're still good. We realistically, we gave one away again. We should really be 2-1. That's what they're thinking.
Right.
We should be 2-1. And it's a realistic argument, right? When I say confidence by saying it versus tangible, right? But then reality hit, right? Mm-hmm. So all the lack of preparation, finishing out plays in practice, the lack of communication in practice,
all the bad
habits. Oh yeah, Greg loafed on, or Jay loafed on 3 plays. I'm not going to say anything to him because I'll probably loafing too.
Right.
We loafing, dapping up. All right, yeah, okay. Kind of, giving half effort or whatever you want to call it, dropping balls. Oh, did you miss that check? Oh, I missed the blitz. Blitz site adjustment, or I missed my blitz. I didn't really, break down. It came crashing down on a game that they thought that they could just show up and win.
Right. And
then the light came on, hopefully. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And if they can do that and take everything that they've done and enjoy it, you'll see a lot more of those things out there. Because everybody I think realizes they all need each other, right?
Right.
And the better that the offense does, and when you get spotted 14 points, of course, there's everything. I mean, that's –
but that also was and I thought this during that game, though, and I should have texted you this when it happened, is we've talked a bunch before about how with Scott Frost and these guys here in Nebraska, we have not seen a lot of chances for them to look like UCF in the way that this game was. And it happened differently where they were kind of spotted the 14 points. They got really great field position. But what did you see a lot down in Orlando? Like they would be up 14-0, 17-3, and then it completely changes the way that you can play on defense, right? And so you got to see that this game. Now, they held Purdue to just -2 rushing yards, which I don't care if you do that against Pee Wee. Like, that's really good. And so they did that, made them one-dimensional because they could then pin their ears back. But then what happened? All of a sudden, Nebraska's getting pressure, right? They're getting sacks. They're affecting the quarterback. So I think that all of that, so you can start to play some different stunts, different blitz packages. So I think it all kind of rolled the way that you would hope to. Of course, like we said, there were definitely things to clean up. You don't want Purdue to kind of get back into the game the way that they did to kind of make it interesting. But on the other side, Nebraska did kind of bow up and find a way to shut the door. They answered the bell, right?
On offense and defense. Answered the score by Purdue with the score. I'm going to say this when I mentioned that Purdue spotted them 14 points. Nebraska went to block the punt.
Oh, yeah, that was not an accident. That was a call.
Yeah, so I want to say that I don't want people to think like, and I'm sure everybody watched the game, I don't want to say people think like Purdue snapped the ball, it went through his hands like a football volley, and Nebraska. Actually, the guy that recovered the fumble should have scored.
Yeah, the explanation afterwards by Falk was interesting. He said, "I'm pretty sure Simon Odie just heard footsteps. His back was towards us, so he didn't know it was all us because there was not a single Purdue player there. But you wouldn't know that,
right? But at the end of the day, it all worked itself out.
Right.
But so Nebraska went and blocked the punt, and they did it again. And then also, even when they got up 17-0, they took advantage of it there. You would like to see them get up 21-0, but so you got to give Nebraska kudos. They actually made their own.
Make your own luck.
Your own luck. And so I like that, considering that, special teams had a rough week against Iowa. They came back and answered the bell. They could still be better. There was one big return on the kickoff unit that you'd like to shut down, but that's trying to –
They had the block punt, too. They gave up the block punt.
Yeah, they gave up the block punt. So, special teams,
Which happened in a weird play, right, with the guy from Purdue running on late.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that was just a miscommunication issue.
Messed up the
guy,
count.
That just messed things up when that guy came off.
It can mess up your count, but at the end of the day, you think that you don't want it. You want your process, of snapping, catching the ball, getting it off. You should be able to beat any type of block. So – look, there's still stuff to clean up, but I want to say that Nebraska took the chances and came out with the aggressive attitude that we're going to win this game, force the action. Of course, the defense had pinned Purdue back enough to go for it, but I think that block was on regardless. The only way that they weren't going to go for a block in that series was if Purdue was punting from Nebraska's 40, because that was just going to be, kicked out of the end zone or sky punts. So they should be, looking at Minnesota, thinking, okay, yeah, we won a game, but you know what, we can play a lot better.
Yeah, we want some more.
We want some more, and that's what I say. This is the time that you need more out of the coaches. You need more out of the training staff. You need definitely more out of the players and the leaders, and everybody has to step up and play well, because look, they're not going to the Final Four of college football. I don't even know if Nebraska would be going to a bowl game. I don't think that. I'm pretty sure it's only the ranked teams.
It depends. It's going to depend. I think there's like
depends on how many doesn't tap out. But
it depends on how many games. It's going to be borderline, depending on if they can win these next two. It'll be borderline.
And
either
how
way,
they win them.
Honestly, to me that doesn't matter. What they've got to continue to do is what they've been doing the last few weeks, which is getting better and playing well. If they do that, if they get a little bit better than where they were against Purdue, they will beat Minnesota, and then you can continue to go from there. And we'll see what happens. It would be nice because, like we said before, and a lot of people know this, like there are seniors like Hymus on this team who haven't gone to a bowl game.
Right.
And so they need that experience, and no matter what that could end up looking like, who knows what that's going to be like this year. You might end up having maybe 1 week of bowl practices or 1 week in between that final crossover game and the bowl game. Who knows? But either way, it will be nice. But like you were saying earlier about you can't get to the momentum into the offseason without this game against Minnesota. This is the only thing that matters.
This is the most pivotal game right here because when you doing it 2 weeks, 3 times is like, okay, it's more than just luck.
Yeah,
right?
we got
this is a
habit
that we've been doing. And then you can actually look back at that Illinois game and be like, you know what, we just had a bad game and everybody's done it.
Yeah, and then people are more likely to actually kind of go with that too.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you revert back to Illinois week and you kind of see guys jumping off sides and holding penalties, illegal formation penalties, delay of game penalties out of timeouts, then you'd be like, oh, okay. We see you guys can't handle success, and we're not where we need to be. So this is big not only for the players, for the culture, for the foundation. It's huge for the coaching staff as well because as soon as this season's over, whenever it need to be, they have as big a job as they've ever had, and even when they were making the transition from UCF to come here and kind of finishing a season and putting together a recruiting class. Because here's what they're going to have to do, considering the COVID, and you got to bring guys back. You got to make roster decisions. You got to re-recruit a lot of guys that didn't get to play as much. Then you got to go out and recruit some of these little young knuckleheads. And then, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So all the while building a roster, your future is next year. It's not like, okay, let's get for a couple years.
Right.
Okay, Adrian's going to be, well, I guess he would be a junior, right?
Yeah, he would technically be a junior. I'm not even there mentally. Like, it's so messed up to go.
But
yes, he would be a junior.
This is his 4th year here.
He'd be technically a junior.
Technically a junior. So you got to get ready to win because next year, assuming everything is going to be back to somewhat normal, let's just say normal or 60, 70% normal as far as capacity or whatever it might be, right? The expectations are going to be ramped up even more, right? And if you handle your business, those expectations shouldn't be a problem.
Right, because they came after something that you accomplished versus just giving them to you.
Tangible confidence, right? This is it. We won. We played great against Iowa, or not great. We played good enough to win against. We gave Iowa the game, and we ran it off 3 games. And we ended up at the end of the crossover game, you think 4-4, right? And in the beginning of the season, if we would have came here if Nebraska played every single game that they played, and if you would have asked the majority of people if they ended up 4-4, say 5-3, I think was legit.
Right.
You were like, okay, that's a good season.
Right. And that is what people were saying. Yeah. We said
so that's where you can be, but you can't get there. It's almost like it's the funny thing ever. It's like, you ever ran the 400 in high school?
I did not.
I was dumb enough to think I was a 100 and 200 guy, right? And one of my best friend, his name is Jamal. He was a 400 guy, and he played at Morehead State. His claim to fame is he said he blew up Jim Kleinsaucer because he was you've seen Jamal. He looks like Reggie Hammond. He looks like Eddie Murphy in 48 Hours Reggie Hammond. So, anyways, he was a 400 guy.
Okay.
I was a sprinter and jumper. And I was like, man, I could do this 400, man. I can run 200. What's the other?
Right. What's another 200?
I'm gonna tell you where Nebraska's at right now. In running the 400, I say the weight of the world jumps on you that last 80 meters.
Okay.
Like no other. I mean, your lungs are burning, your lips are white, and it's the farthest I've ever seen. Like 80 meters to go. You know what I mean? And that's where Nebraska's at. You can see it, right? And you've turned the corner and you got good pace, right? Mm-hmm. But now the pressure's on. Now it's there. Now you got to do it. But you got to and the way you finish the 400, which I didn't know, which Jamal told me afterwards, is you got to rely on your fundamentals, your technique. You got to have your breathing techniques and stuff like that. Then you can get there and you can actually use your speed to finish strong. Well, Nebraska's, the correlation is what they've done up here, right, up to this point, practice hard, work on fundamentals, keep each other, hold each other accountable, right intensity, preparation, come into practice to get better, not just go to practice or get through practice.
Right, not just to get through, yeah.
And to get better, that's what they need to do with looking at the finish line, right? And that's the hardest thing for a young team to do. But, if I had to guess with this, I mean, they've done it 2 weeks. I'm going to assume that they're going to be able to do it, especially if it's put to them at, look, we need to prepare well. Plus, this is a game that we got embarrassed on national TV.
Yeah, you can picture them running that stretch zone to the right.
No, it's to the left. They would run
to the left?
To our right. To our right.
All right, yeah, all right.
Right? So they're going to come
pushing guys off the ball.
Blowing guys out, okay? So I'm challenging guys personally.
Yep.
Okay?
It would be the conversations in that D-line room need to be intense this week.
Intense, and with Caleb Tanner and Garrett Nelson and all. And then also, I'll say, listen here. These guys ain't coming down here and coming down here without no shirts on and warm-ups. All right? Okay? This is senior day.
Yep.
Okay? It's senior day. It's going to be cold. It doesn't matter if they come out there with 40 guys. Right? Yep. They're here, and it's time for Nebraska to serve them. So, I'm more excited for this game than I say Purdue, because I felt like, playing West Lafayette, that just looked –
it's just weird.
That just looked like a high school huddle.
It was the weirdest game. Like, to me, like, of all, and it's funny because the Big Ten is kind of known for having these big, huge stadiums,
right.
And that was what's going to be weird about this season is playing in those big stadiums and them being empty.
Right.
Except for Purdue, maybe
small.
Illinois is kind of like that. Like,
Purdue is like small compared to like Texas schools.
Yeah, like I've seen Texas high schools that look
Texas
that
high school.
big.
That's what I'm saying.
So
this is going to be. I'm more excited for this game, considering that what Nebraska's done, what they can do, and they get to play Minnesota, a team that they've kind of went back and forth. The first year is Frost and those guys put it on them. Last year was Minnesota's year, so we'll see what in the rubber match. And so it's a big challenge because Minnesota, offensively, they got a serviceable quarterback. They still do have some receivers, and their running back is. I would say, if I'm missing somebody, I would say he's probably the best in the Big Ten. Their running back. If he's not one, he's one of the top 3 running, and he's physical. He does well in the pass game, and they are starting to feature him. And their offensive line is obviously starting to block well. So, and there's some big boys, but it's not something that Nebraska can't handle. But you got to go do it, and they should want Minnesota to come down here and play. It's a challenge for them to step up to the utmost, and it's right there for the taking.
Now listen, every week we close this show out with a segment, my favorite one.
Oh, I've been waiting for
put them on blast. Well, we basically put somebody on blast for something they did. They said
put them on blast.
I could go with the Chicago Bears again because again they embarrassed me on TV. And everybody needs to go, but I will not go there. I am actually going with Kyrie Irving, the returning point guard of the Brooklyn Nets. You know where I'm going here. I don't want to just do this because he's taken away from my job, the media, but this is ridiculous. So Kyrie Irving came out and said he released a statement last week. Instead of doing their media day or after their first practice or whatever, all he did was release a statement through a spokesperson, which he said COVID-19 has impacted us all in many ways, so I pray for the safety and health of our communities domestically and abroad. I am truly excited for the season to start, and I am also praying that everyone remains safe and healthy throughout the journey. Instead of speaking to the media today, I am issuing this statement to ensure that my message is conveyed properly. I am committed to show up to work every day, ready to have fun, compete, perform, and win championships alongside my teammates and colleagues in the Nets organization. My goal this season is to let my work on and off the court speak for itself. Life hit differently this year, and it requires me to move differently. So this is the beginning of that change. Kyrie, all we asking you to do is come talk for 5 minutes.
That's
like,
it.
what does
300 seconds?
Like, really? Like, nobody was asking him to do a podcast or to do anything crazy. Like, just come talk Like, first of all, you've been injured. Like, you got a new coach. Right. Y'all already said that weird stuff about how y'all don't really need a coach. Like, a different guy can be a coach. And maybe that's part of why you don't really want to talk, is because you're always saying something crazy. Right. Not crazy to him. It's crazy to everybody else. But I think the biggest thing with this crazy statement from Kyrie is that it's actually going to put more pressure on his teammates. I would be so annoyed if I was Kevin Durant or Spencer Dinwiddie, Joe Harris, whoever on that team.
Now I got to answer questions about you.
I'm going to have to answer a question about him all the time.
You ain't even interviewing me.
All the time. Somebody, every game, somebody is going to ask them, well, what do you think Kyrie thought about blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Which is going to be annoying. I would just say, go ask Kyrie his locker over there. Like, I know he don't want to talk, but just go on over there.
Yeah.
Because I would be annoyed that he was doing that and to set the season up. Like, Kyrie is just a different cat.
He's a different cat, but I think he's a calculated, passive-aggressive, I want the attention.
Yeah, I want the attention without saying I want the attention.
You know, the whole Mamba mentality. He didn't want to play with LeBron. Then he goes to the Celtics. Then he's like, now I see why LeBron is such a good leader. Then he was like, all right, now, right after LeBron won the championship, I'm glad I get to play with the best player ever, Kevin Durant. He just is an idiot. Then I'm not even going to talk about when he said the world is flat and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I was about to say, we could go through a whole bunch of different stuff. But I still, and it's not even that crazy. Like, do you know the moment, though, that I think it all changed for him, and I kind of understood what he was coming from, but at the same time, he could have handled it differently, is when he was in Cleveland with LeBron, and they asked him about LeBron being a father figure to the team, and how he's been a great leader and all that. Yeah. And Kyrie went on that little thing about father and, like, made the reporter repeat it again. And then when he said, I only have one father, and then named his father, I understood in a way why Kyrie would be upset about that, but at the same time, he didn't need to handle that way. First of all, I kind of embarrassed the reporter. Second of all,
he knew what the
reporter meant. Like, that wasn't a moment for you to kind of bow up and show how, like, much of a man you were. Like, that, and so to me, that was just the first real big example of this type of behavior from him, which has always just been weird. And now you're on your third team in the league, and now you've brought this team together. You know it's going to go sideways with him and KD. Yeah. Even as much as they claim that they're boys, it's going to be weird. And then he can't stay healthy. Right. And I really do hope that they add James Harden some way, because then they're going to be fighting because it's only one ball.
Yeah, only one ball.
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Kyrie is a guy that talks a lot.
Yep.
A guy that I'm going to put on blast. I had a personal run-in with him. It was probably on a scale 1 to 10, maybe 5. But he's been a guy that's had success in the NFL as a coordinator, but is always rubbing people the wrong way, and that is Greg Williams. So
Mr. Bounty Gate.
Yeah, Mr. Bounty. So Greg Williams, when I was in Buffalo, I had a really good year, and long story short, he was really close with Eddie Robinson Jr. Brought in Eddie Robinson Jr. I told him it was going to be the worst mistake he was ever going to do. Conversely, the next year I had 2 personal fouls. We ended up losing the game. But hold on. The next year we played up in Buffalo, I busted out the stanky leg on him and got the payback, right? Ultimately, I will say Greg Williams taught me a lot about football and the third down defense. But I will tell you one thing about Greg. He is more petty than me or than any of the worst
Greg Williams is our new
females or vindictive people out there. But I'm putting him on blast because it has a little bit of Nebraska ties here. Okay. Right? There's an article that says Greg Williams should be fired immediately. Probably should. Okay. But the reason why people are saying this is, well, one, I'm going to also say this. Greg Williams, in his affidavit on Bountygate, dimed out Jonathan Vilma for giving $10,000
still salty that
bounty for Brett Favre. Right. Yep, he's up there telling on one of his players that it helped him get obviously a Super Bowl. Right. Shouldn't say I don't know. I've been in those meetings before. I've been in where there's a takeout order and everybody comes in with cash, right? But we don't know who put the cash.
Right. I don't know. I don't know nothing about it.
Well, anyways, Greg Williams, the Jets were 0-11, had a chance to upset the Raiders.
Yep.
He decides. Now, there's a stat that I saw on ESPN, I think, that Greg Williams was the only defensive coordinator that called a zero blitz with, under 30 seconds or something like that ever, like in the last 2 years, right? So, and the reason why it ties in is because the Jets end up losing the game on a 46-yard bomb.
Henry Ruggs.
Okay. Now, Greg Williams called a zero blitz. when he should have known all they had to do was score a touchdown.
Yep. Keep everything in front of you.
Right? You can play cover 4. You can play a little cover 3. You can play a little combo coverage.
Anything but.
You could play a little man-to-man with safety help. You can play under with a little over. You could bracket him. You could double bracket him. You could play prevent. You could do everything, right? I named about 10, right?
Right.
You could play cover 8. You could play a little cover 7 too, right? Greg Williams chose to go zero blitz.
Who did he leave on the island?
And here's the funny thing about it. Late in the year, usually teams that aren't winning or just teams in general, if you have some injuries, you bring up some guys on practice squad. So the New York Jets brought up the Nebraska former black shirt Lamar Jackson. And bless his heart, this is not his fault.
No, it's really not.
This is not his fault.
No,
so he just got brought up.
Yeah.
He just got brought up from practice squad. Probably played a good game up to here, but now the only play that we're seeing all over Twitter and what I'm talking about right now, he was the cornerback that Greg Williams decided to leave in man-to-man coverage on the wide side of the field with inside technique with no help. Against
very fast.
Against Henry Ruggs that ran a 4.3 flat at the 40 or 4.2 something, right?
Yep.
And he got beat and, really, left Lamar out there on the island. Now, granted, Lamar could have played it better, but at the end of the day, it was a bad call. And when you have a player saying it's a bad call and the head coach saying it was a bad call.
And the opposing team saying we were happy they called it.
And the opposing team and the receiver and everybody said it was a bad call. I'm putting Greg Williams on blast because he put a guy out there and he put the team at risk for getting a win and put a player out there, any player, any cornerback doesn't want to be in that situation because you're trying to play situational football. I'm putting him on blast for calling that play and putting a guy out there, obviously with Nebraska ties, out there to be, not be successful. And when you're, I've been a part of a Buffalo Bills team that went 3-13, and when you are trying and you're right there to win and you lose, that's not good. And, I've seen guys that Greg put on islands like that. We lost a game down in Atlanta like that one time, and he has a history of this, and I'm not sure why because he's on his way out of town with Adam Gase here in about. Well, maybe today.
Yeah, we'll see what Shefty tweets out.
Today, yeah.
Right. Oh, he definitely deserved to be put on blast. But that's going to do it for us today. Subscribe to the podcast everywhere you can listen to them. Rate us, review us, leave us a 5-star review. If you only leave 4, I am inclined to think that you are a hater. Make sure that you are checking out the other podcasts on the Hail Varsity Network, the Mind Your Own podcast, Varsity Club, More to It, and the Hail Varsity Radio Show. We do have an email that you can send us love notes to at straightupbreakdown@hailvarsity.com. And you can find us on Twitter at Greg Smith HV and at Foreman5644. We will catch you next time.